Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to a special Christmas episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives, and I am your host, Shawn Eastridge. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Christmas day.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have a wonderful day. Yeah. My
Family,
guest host is
friends,
already
draw
agreeing
near.
with me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let it snow, chestnuts.
That's what the holiday spirit, it invokes in people the need to just jump into a podcast episode. I was just going to do an episode by myself, but I think the holiday spirit conjured none other than Tricia Aurand to join me from the Lessons from the Screenplay team and also from the wonderful world of my life and childhood.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
welcome back.
It is so good to be back here, Shawn. Thank you for having me back.
I am always happy to do episodes with you. What we did the first time around, and this was with the rest of your buddies at the Lessons from the Screenplay team, the first time around, I introduced all of you to a film that I loved and none of you had seen. And I think that first one was that AI?
Yeah, we talked about AI.
So we did AI.
What a trip that was.
Yeah, and then you flipped the script the next time around. You all introduced me to a film, and you kept it in. It wasn't technically it wasn't Spielberg, although Spielberg is directing the remake, and we did West Side Story, which is one of your favorites.
The original West Side Story.
The original
1961.
That's right, and we talked about, and someday we'll come back around and we'll check out that remake because I hear it's really great.
I hear that too. I need theaters to be safe so I can go and watch it.
Exactly. So I completely understand and agree. And now what I was suggesting is that for this round, we watch movies that neither of us have seen. And you were like, yeah, I'm all up for that. But also, have you seen Little Women, the 1994 Little Women, because it's a Christmas movie and we're going into Christmas. And I suggested Platoon because Platoon is as old as we are. And you were like, Shawn, what the hell is the matter with you? Why would anybody want to watch Platoon around Christmas time? And you're right. You're right.
See, now you're basically committing us to doing an episode on Platoon because neither one of us have seen it. And it is the Best Picture winner from the year that we were born. And so we really should. It's pretty disgraceful.
Do you like how I snuck that in there?
That neither one of us has seen it.
Yeah, I basically am now making, like you said, I've tricked you into committing to having this happen. So
look, I can do it. If I put my mind to watching Vietnam War movies, I can. No one wants it right now.
Okay, no, and we're not gonna. We'll be okay. We'll circle back around to Platoon.
Yeah.
The important thing is you were basically like, we've got to watch Little Women. It's a Christmas movie, and I have never seen Little Women. At least not the version we're watching. We are watching the 1994 version directed by, is it Gillian Armstrong?
Gillian Armstrong, yeah.
Okay, great. So I had never seen this. I had, however, and the first time I remember you bringing this movie up to me as a potential movie we should watch is I had seen the Greta Gerwig version a couple years ago when it was in theaters, and I loved it. I knew nothing about Little Women, and I am a big Greta Gerwig fan, so I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And you were like, yeah, it's good. And I was like, well, wait, what's the problem? And you were like, well, the 1994 version is my jam. But tell me a little bit more about that. When did you first see this? Were you a fan of the book? Like, what is your experience with this whole, like, the 1994 version is the fifth film adaptation. So explain all of it to me, Tricia.
Okay, so Little Women is a classic American novel, obviously by Louisa May Alcott, and it's a wonderful piece of writing. So I just really strongly recommend the book, and I don't think at the time the 1994 version came out, I had actually read the book, but I know my sister had, and it was very much the story was already something we were kind of familiar with. And I've tried to describe this before to men mostly and tried to really get to the bottom of, like, imagine a story that you are really familiar with. I don't know, something like that's like maybe a quintessentially sort of masculine story, but is just a part of, like, sort of your folklore, and I don't know, like a prototypical
I'm trying to think of a comparison. Clearly, I'm not a real man. I can't think of anything.
I don't know, but it's just something like Oliver Twist, right? Or I don't know, like a classic or a Christmas Carol, right? Something
Okay,
Dickens
okay.
like that, where it's like, I kind of have always known it of it kind of a thing. And it's been adapted 1,000 times. A Christmas Carol is a really good example, actually. It's been adapted like 1,000 times, and you've seen some version of it, kind of thing. In my experience, this tends to be the way that most women relate to Little Women. At least most white American women, if we can just put it that way. Louisa May Alcott was a early, I want to say the word feminist, but was battling a lot of sexism in her time to make a name for herself as a novelist, as a writer.
Right. Well, at the time, I mean, that was essentially like unheard of. And
Correct.
as far as I understand it, during the time, the idea of Joe like wanting to be a writer, it was just like, well, the reality was unless you married rich and your husband was willing to like, and he was a good guy, that really determined the course of your life. Like you were like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a mom and you're staying at home. So
Yeah.
it was like calling her a feminist for sure. Like it was super revolutionary. Just the idea of somebody wanting to be a published author within the context of this novel.
Exactly. And, it takes place in the 1860s, right? Mr. marches away in the Civil War. It's autobiographical for Louisa May Alcott. And so she was writing about her own experiences and her own family. So, like, there's a lot of meta and self-referential material in the novel and in most of the film versions as well, especially in the Greta Gerwig version from
Mm.
2019, which we can get to. And so there's just this presence to the novel about women making their way in the world as women that young girls are sort of raised with. Like if you were brought up especially in the 90s and like you had an American Girl doll and you were like, these are kind of like models for the way, like the different kinds of women, or like just, you can find yourself somewhere in the book, you can find yourself somewhere in the story. And the 1994 version, directed by Gillian Armstrong and written by Robin Swycord, is an incredible adaptation of the novel. I probably saw it in 1994. And, I think I do remember going to the theater. I don't know if it was on Christmas Day. This is a Christmas movie. Both the Greta Gerwig version from 2019 and the Gillian Armstrong version came
Yeah,
out
it
on
was
Christmas
released on,
Day.
I think the Gerwig one was too. Like,
It
I think
was.
this was released limited on Christmas and then it was released nationwide a few days later, but that counts. That
Yeah.
counts.
It is the classic like Christmas Day, family movie kind of thing.
Right.
And I remember going to see it in the theater with my sister and my mom and my aunt, my cousin. Like it just is, I don't know, it was really moving to me at the time, and was one of the, I think we had it on VHS maybe, or then eventually on DVD. And so I've just watched it many times. It's a star-studded cast. You wanna just read who's in it here,
Yeah,
Shawn?
yeah, please do.
But obviously, it's Winona Ryder, it's Christian Bale, it's young Kirsten Dunst, Trudy Alvarado, who I love, Susan Sarandon,
Isn't Claire Danes in this movie too?
Claire Danes, thank you. I mean, Gabriel
Good
Byrne,
Lord.
who's
Yeah.
incredible. Like, everybody in it is so good.
It's so funny, and especially now looking back, and especially with Christian Bale, yeah, just
Yeah.
bringing the guy's perspective. Oh my god, Batman! Like anything, I don't think I've seen anything of his pre-American Psycho. Like so
What?
I haven't
You're
seen
telling me
him.
you haven't seen Newsies?
I haven't seen
Shawn.
Newsies. Future episode, maybe we'll do
Shawn.
that instead of Platoon.
He was fresh off in Newsies when he came to do Little Women. Newsies was 1992.
That's certainly, I always have an appeal of like what makes somebody into Batman, and so there is a missing piece of my life in which I watch all the Christian Bale movies leading him to the role of Batman and try to understand who he is as a human being.
It's quite a journey.
That may be a podcast in and of itself, but yeah, for obvious reasons, Little Women was never something I grew up with. Like you said, like American Girl, like all the things that equate to like femininity or like girls who are icky and gross. Like, so it was
Sure.
100% any commercials or previews I saw, it was just like you immediately tune out. Anybody who says you want to watch Little Women, I'm like, no, are you kidding? I'm a guy. Like, why would I? That was my reaction. It's like, no, of course not. It's a girl's thing. It was never of interest to me. I knew about it. It was in the back of my mind. I never read it. I knew about this film. And like I said, the Greta Gerwig movie was my introduction to the entire thing. But even then, I recognized scenes from, whether I'd heard about them from the novel or maybe I had seen clips from the 94 film, like I can't remember the character's name, but the girl who falls through the ice and all that stuff. Like
Yeah, Amy.
I'd remembered these things, like little moments that somehow had latched onto my consciousness, even though I had never seen them or read them or had even taken interest in them. And what I'm super curious about is, like you said, this adaptation, from what I can tell, it was really well received. It did
Yes.
really well at the box office. Critically,
Yep.
audiences loved it. And it's super, I mean, it speaks to the power of the source material that I can't speak for the other adaptations. I haven't seen them. And I think there was another one released the same year as Greta Gerwig's, like it was made for TV or something.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
this is all to say there are two adaptations of this film at the very least that are considered fantastic. And how do you cope with that as a film fan? Like, how do you pick and choose? And I wonder if it's like, is it a matter of which one you saw first, as in your case, where you were able to go to Greta Gerwig and say, I like it, but like, I already have my version that I love and is so near and dear to me. I mean, it really just speaks to the power of the material itself,
Yeah.
that it consistently is amazing.
Well, it's just such an interesting case because there is not one thing wrong with the Greta Gerwig version. It's a really good movie. Like, it's a really good movie. It's a different approach to the material, and we can talk about that. Like, I'll be super curious to hear from you once you see the 1994 version. And so, like, I don't want to pit them against each other because they're both just excellent films in their own right, and they happen to be telling the same story more or
Yeah.
less.
Well,
Um,
I wonder if it's not even about pitting them against each other, but almost in a way, Greta Gerwig for sure has the indie film cred. Like, she has like
sure.
the film snob cred in this day and age that maybe the 90s Little Women was more quote unquote mainstream, whereas a Greta Gerwig association suddenly gives it more street cred in the cinemaphile community. And I wonder if it's not about pitting them against each other, but maybe I got the vibe when we were talking about it and talking about doing this episode, it was more of you being like, there's something to be appreciated here that maybe is being brushed aside in favor of like Greta Gerwig made this one. Like, and again, I love Greta Gerwig, so no offense to her, but I could see what you were talking about when you were like, no, I think there's value to this previous adaptation that I mean, not, I'm sure there were many between, but the 94 version and this version feel like the most mainstream, well-known and
Yeah.
financially successful. Like, I wonder if that's more of what it is it's like when you have adaptations, separate adaptations of similar projects, whether it's books or we've seen a lot of this, like the one I'm thinking of is Les Mis and things like that, where
Right.
you have more recent adaptations with star-studded casts that in some cases actually isn't that much better and might even be worse than the previous version that people are aware of with Liam Neeson and all those people. So I wonder if it's more about that, like just kind of in cinema versus another art form like theater, where in theater you can have multiple adaptations of the
Right.
same story. Cinema is a little bit more, and I'm guilty of this as well. It's like you want a definitive version of your
Mhm.
material. Like, there are about 50,000 different Spider-Men right now, and all I want anyone to care about is Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man
Yeah,
with
Sam
Tobey
Raimi
Maguire.
Spider-Man.
So, but
Um,
that's I wonder if that's kind of maybe what it is kind of reminding people of this version and saying like there's something to this as well, even if it wasn't directed by like the hip and happening indie director of our time.
yeah, I think that that's part of it. I think there's a few layers to my resentment here, and we don't need to
We need to
psychoanalyze
peel.
me
This is an
about this.
onion that we're gonna. No, not an onion. It's a wonderfully wrapped Christmas present that we
There
are
you
gonna
go.
dig right through. It's gonna be
Um,
great.
but I do think that, and I think maybe it'll be interesting to see if I start to get annoyed about West Side Story for the same reason.
Mm,
But I do get annoyed when people, especially critics, come to the material itself as though the material is brand new. And I think I was reading a lot of takes from male critics who about Greta Gerwig's version that were like, oh my God, what an amazing story about like women's struggles and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, where in the hell have you been? Like,
Well, no, I think that's exactly it. Like in my case, it was 100% like I saw it because my wife and her family wanted to see it for Christmas. And I was like, yeah, sure. But I think my interest in seeing it was definitely like, oh yeah, Greta Gerwig, I like her a lot. And I think for a lot of speaking for on behalf of a lot of male film
all
fans,
men.
I think, yeah, and I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of all men. I do believe I am the manliness, or the manliness. I can't even say the word correctly, so clearly you know where I stand. But I do think it is the reality of these guys who just hadn't seen the 90s film or hadn't grown up with it, because for the same reasons I have, it was like, well, why would I? That's a girl thing, and I want to see Star Wars and Superman and things like that. So it makes
Sure.
perfect sense that they would be like, oh my God, this is amazing, having never seen it before. But suddenly it's like Greta Gerwig's involvement opens the doors for whatever.
And to be clear, there are a lot of, it's basically infinitely complex, but there are a lot of things at play here. And in the Greta Gerwig version, came out 25 years later, and the world has changed a lot
Mm,
in the last 25 years. And it's not a crazy thing to say in Hollywood now that mainstream movies can be carried by like mostly female casts. That's a thing that, you know, studios are jumping at the chance to make like a basically all female version of a story that's
yeah.
like, oh, it's all these women because we suddenly being progressive is lucrative. And so suddenly we're interested in that, which it was a real, and we have women directors now and they get nominated for Oscars, and they're like real directors and stuff. They're not just making chick flicks.
So it sounds like what there is here, just like listening to you say this, there is a little bit of resentment that not like negative, or not like saying like Greta Gerwig doesn't deserve it, but like somebody like Gillian Armstrong making this fantastic adaptation, and it was nominated for Oscars for
It
like, I
was
mean, Winona Ryder got an Oscar nomination. I think the score,
Jillian.
like,
Oh, I mean, the score is incredible. I can't wait for you to hear the score.
but I think there is something to your point, like if this film, which looks like it was critically acclaimed, well received, like what's the difference? If it's the same story, why does this one get more pedigree? And like you said, it may just be the changing times and the willingness
Yeah.
to be like, oh, this is actually like an important story now, whereas before it could be more easily dismissed.
Yes. And a big part of that is just, as you're pointing out, how it was marketed. And by necessity, right? There wasn't a precedent in Hollywood for a women's film like this, or
Right.
just the idea of like, well, this is a women's movie, so we're gonna market it at women. Women's in the title. Like, we're gonna do it that way. And it was just, it was interesting. A year or so ago, I introduced my co-hosts on Beyond the Screenplay to the Joe Wright adaptation from 2005 of Pride and Prejudice, which is an excellent movie by any definition. And several of them had not seen it, or had not really thought of it as being like a prestige film, despite being directed by Joe Wright.
You're
And
right. Yeah.
with an incredible cast. Keira Knightley is amazing. Everybody in it is fantastic. And um I think it was Michael Tucker, my co-host, that said, this was never shown to me. This was never marketed towards me. It was not on my radar, not because I was dismissive of it, but just because it kind of was not shown to me. And the
Right.
the reality that women's stories are human stories still feels a little bit like a novel idea to people, and especially to marketing executives and
Mm.
studios. And so like the fact that just because it happens to be about women, the opposite is never true. It's never like, I haven't heard of that movie because there's only men in it. That has literally never happened to me in my life. Because men's stories are human stories, right? But the idea that the same would be true about women is still like kind of revolutionary, it feels like. And so I think that was the thing that was really annoying me.
This is all the pre-show too.
I
We
know,
haven't even
here we
watched the
are.
movie yet. I can't
know.
wait.
The Greta Gerwig version is really good, but it's like, do we need it?
Yeah.
Did we need another version of Little Women when there are also lots of other women's stories that we could be telling? Why are we telling the same one again when we have really good versions of it? The Katharine Hepburn version is also pretty good. And so it's just one of these weird like remake situations. And Greta brought a lot of things to the 2019 version of Little Women that are different than this, and bring to light some really fascinating angles on the story. So again, it's not like she made a shot-for-shot remake of Robin Twyford and Gillian Armstrong's version, but this is a really good version of a really good story. So I really hope you like it, Shawn.
I'm excited. I hope I like it too, and I think I will. And I think, again, I'm biased because I loved the Gerwig version so much, and it was my introduction to the story. So it's going to be the challenge I'm trying to put forth for myself is to try to detach myself from that and enjoy this and try to flash back to if I was maybe a little bit wiser as let's see, 94. I guess I was 8 years old.
We were 8.
There's no way. There's no way I was going to be watching this movie. But maybe like if I was open-minded and was able to sit down and watch it without feeling like, oh, this is icky. Flashing back to that period and seeing like, okay, maybe I can find a way to making it sound like I'm going to struggle to enjoy this, and I don't think I will. I think I'm going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be a matter of just like respecting it and seeing it for what it is and the time it was in, and not trying to impose my own. But it could have been in the same way that I think you're looking at the Greta Gerwig version, me not then reversing and going back to this one and saying, well, it should have done these things. So that's what I'm curious to see, and I guess we'll find out.
I can't wait.
Come back. I can't wait either. I am genuinely excited. So we will watch.
Some beautiful holiday vibes to it.
That's what I want. That's what I need right now.
The soundtrack is really gorgeous. I can't wait for you to hear that.
The soundtrack? Let me see.
Thomas Newman. It's one of his best.
Oh my God.
Scores.
Yes. Okay.
Like, yeah. Even just the opening. Yeah. I can't wait. Just you can just text me after you watch the opening title sequence and listen to the score. It's really lovely.
It's gonna be I'm excited. I am excited. So we will watch it. We will be back to discuss. So stay tuned.
Now available to own on video cassette.
All right, we're back. Tricia, this version of Little Women is so... I'm going to say the word precious, and that sounds condescending, and I don't mean it as such. It is a precious, sweet, and sincere film, and I completely understand the reputation it has. And almost like now understand kind of the frustration. And I was reading some interviews with Gillian Armstrong, who is very complimentary of Greta Gerwig, but she was very much like, that was hard for me to go see that movie because
of course
it's hard in general. Like you make a definitive, well-loved version of the film. And like you're saying, did we need another one of these? Watching this film, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. I had Sarah next to me just like going on and on about like, I love Timothée Chalamet, but Christian Bale is like my guy. And I was like, look, I ranted on for 20 minutes about Batman in the first part of this episode and why Christian Bale is the best. But there's one, I think is it Amy who said, if I were a boy, I'd want to look just like that. Yeah, me too. Me too. If I were a boy, I would want to look just like Christian Bale. But no, I think, I want to try my best, and I'm going to fail. I just know it, to avoid pitting the two adaptations against each other. I think for certain reasons, I prefer the Greta Gerwig one, but this I think it feels almost, without having read the book, almost maybe like a truer adaptation of the book itself.
Yeah. So you are absolutely picking up on something that is true. The Gillian Armstrong version from 1994 is a straight adaptation of the novel. It is not taking in any apocryphal material. It's not taking in anything from Louisa May Alcott's life or journals or letters or other writings. Like, it is focused on adapting the novel. Whereas the Greta Gerwig version actually takes quite a bit of stuff about, here's like what we know about Louisa May Alcott. There's, there's that whole really beautiful sequence at the end of Greta Gerwig's version about the publishing of the book and like her negotiating with the editor about, like, I don't want to sell my heroine off for money. Okay, I guess I'll do it if I can get this percentage of the royalties. And then you can see the whole beautiful, that printing sequence, which is just the printing and binding sequence at the end of the Greta Gerwig version, which is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I rewatched the Greta Gerwig version yesterday just to,
I
I was,
almost did. I won't lie to you.
yeah.
This is a secret, but I bought it for Sarah. We don't own it, so I bought it for Sarah as
Aw.
a Christmas present. And this episode's going out at Christmas, so that's not a spoiler for her. I like that I referred to that as a spoiler. That's how much of a movie nerd I am. It's a spoiler
for my Christmas gifts.
Yes,
for my
exactly.
wife.
But I will say, just completely aside, the reason we haven't owned that Blu-ray prior to this is because that cover is so atrocious. Of just, I love. I can't even pronounce her name correct. Is it Ronan?
Saoirse Ronan, yeah.
Saoirse Ronan. Like, I love her so much. She's wonderful. She's lovely. But the cover is so lazy of just her like standing there staring at you.
Yeah.
That I think it turned us off from, as much as we love the movie, it turned us off from buying it. But I wanted to rewatch it almost immediately. And
Yeah.
again, like I said, I posited to myself, or I challenged myself not to compare the two, but it was very, very hard. In the same way, I'm sure for you, it was very hard for you, having grown up with this beloved adaptation that is every bit as charming and essential. For you to like watch the Greta Gerwig movie and especially have to deal with kind of like, I talk about it on Missing Frames a lot, where sometimes a reaction to a film can color your genuine feelings about it. Like, you can be like, I really like that. And somebody's like, I love it. It's the best movie ever. And you're like, well, let's not go crazy. And then, in a few days, all of a sudden you're saying, you know what, that movie sucks and I hate it and da-da-da, even if you don't mean it. But I can totally see how that would work. And I kept trying, like, I was like, I'm trying so hard not to think about it. But there were things I think I find that fascinating, that Louisa May Alcott, like, they incorporated more elements of her life and of the times, because I think at the end of the day, the reason the Gerwig one spoke more to me personally is, whereas, again, this is going to sound condescending, I don't mean it as such, but whereas the 1994 version feels a little bit more, not fairy tale, because it's dealing with very real themes of death and feminism and finding your place in the world, but there is almost a little bit more of a storybook element to it. Like, it felt a little bit more Disneyfied, if that makes sense. Whereas Gerwig's version felt like, okay, if the Little Women 1994 is a Disneyfied version of what happened, Little Women 2019 is like what really happened, like somebody actually, a documentary, quote unquote, of the actual events.
Right. Yeah, I think that feeling that you get when you watch it speaks a lot to our sort of, even just, it really is just a 21st century sensibility about what we want from our period movies. Like,
Yeah.
there's the Joe Wright adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, which I mentioned, was moving in this direction with its adaptation of the source material, which is like in Pride and Prejudice and like Regency, sort of romance movies like that. We're used to seeing everybody being really formal and really uptight. They like wait for someone else to finish speaking before they start speaking. And there's sort of this formality to the way that it's being framed as well. And like
100%.
edited
Yeah.
together, there's a little bit more, of that formalism and sort of cleanness to everything. And that's kind of, I think, what creates the storybook version you're feeling that you're talking about. Whereas Joe Wright in the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice, he was like, actually, this is going to be muddy and messy. There's going to be like some handheld camera things. There's going to be like people talking over each other. The Bennett girls running around in the house, yelling and screaming and laughing and being like messy. And the Greta Gerwig version takes that idea of like, these girls are messy and they don't speak formally and they don't have proper syntax all the time or wait for each other to finish talking. Like, it's all just, they're just in a heap in a pile. And yeah, fighting and screaming and pulling hair.
That's exactly it. I was thinking, because it was very, in the way it was shot and the way it's edited, for the most part, it's very, very straight adaptation. Like, not disrespectful. It's beautifully shot. The score, as you said, is magnificent.
Right.
And it's just, it's well made and it's very straightforward. And I think the formal nature of it, which, as you were saying, is just kind of evocative of the
It's
times,
just
evocative,
tastes, modern
yeah,
tastes,
and
I think,
really,
yeah.
it's in the source material. I haven't read the whole book, but I read a portion of it after I saw the Gerwig movie, and kind of like, I was like, oh yeah, this feels a little bit more like what I would expect a book from the 1800s to sound like. And Greta Gerwig's felt very vital and alive and modern in a way that I think, for me personally, and as a fan of those kinds of films, like slice of life films, Richard Linklater, and
Right.
things that are very straightforward and grounded and real, like, I think I immediately was like, oh, no wonder I latched onto it so strongly. And why
Mhm.
there was, it felt, while this one doesn't feel any less sincere, this doesn't feel any less personal or important, it just felt a little bit more like that barrier of formality was kind of holding me at shoulder, like their arm's length, I mean, for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that that's fair, and that was one of the biggest things that I actually bumped on a little bit in the Gerwig version, where you're absolutely right that the way that the characters speak in Gerwig's version is not the way that Louisa May Alcott's characters speak. They speak much more like they do in the Gillian Armstrong version, where
Right.
they have this proper syntax. I was noticing when I watched the Gerwig version last night, there was a moment where Marmee is hugging the girls and she's saying goodbye to them or something when she's going to go to Washington and take care of their father, Bob Odenkirk.
Yes, that's what I will say. The 90s version already suffers for a severe lack of Bob Odenkirk, which, every film that doesn't have Bob Odenkirk immediately goes down a notch, in my opinion.
I don't know. I yelled at the theater when Bob Odenkirk walked in. I was like, "Oh my god!"
I think I
what?
did too. I was the only one in the theater who knew who he was. I think I went, "Hey!" and it was just so jarring, but also wonderful.
And he walks in and says, "My Little
Yeah.
Women." Stop it.
On many, many levels, it's like, wait a second, what's happening?
Anyway, but there was this moment in the Gerwig version when I was watching it last night where Marmee goes, she's saying goodbye to the girls and she goes, "Love you," which is just not a way that people ever said "I love you." Like that
Right.
just that construction of a sentiment is so modern and is not 1860s at all. You can't just go, "Love you." Like,
Yeah.
we don't know. That it's not accurate, right?
Right.
And so for me, those moments in the Gerwig version, while I understand why, like when the characters are speaking the way they do, there are so many other little instances like that, that are just like the syntax is modern, the like expression, the sentiment that's being expressed is modern. For those moments, I was just like, this really shakes me out of the time period.
Mhm.
And I think that the thing that Gerwig was trying to do was, make this relatable to 21st century audiences and make it and purposefully tear down some of those barriers that, 150 years worth of time, 160 years worth of time naturally create.
Yeah.
Like, and so, borrowing from Louisa May Alcott's other texts, journals, especially borrowing material from letters between her and Marmee, her own mother, uh, Gerwig was really, I think, deliberately trying to say, people don't change. Women are still dealing with all of this stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's
Um,
very much a vibe of that is, well, it's in the 1994 version. I think the perspective of 2019 and the 21st century for sure lends something to that adaptation, Gerwig's
yeah,
adaptation.
that's the emphasis, right? Which is that women have minds and souls as well as just hearts, and that
Yeah.
it's a beautiful speech that Saoirse Ronan gives near the end of that film, but
I'm
it's
so
such
glad you
a
can pronounce her name, because I'm a failure in that regard.
it's very difficult. When I watch it, I feel like she's looking directly into the camera in some ways,
Yeah.
and going like, I want to. I don't remember what she says. Like, women can have
Is it that,
careers
like,
and all these
women
things,
are
but I'm so lonely, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's a very I remember thinking what you are describing, like, it's almost like an impassioned speech, like, women are so great and da, da, da. But what humanizes it is that moment of, but I'm so lonely, and it turns it less from
mhm,
like proselytizing into like, I'm just
sure.
a person and a human, and I'm trying to make my way in the world, and I
Yeah.
don't know what to do, which I think is really beautiful, and is not, again, there's no lack of sincerity in the 94 version, but moments like that I felt like I really responded to in that adaptation that weren't as plentiful in the 94 version. But what the 94 version does have is an amazing cast and this incredible sense of devotion to the material that really, like, I felt like I was reading the book. I was fascinated just to see this is the first time I've seen Christian Bale pre-American Psycho in anything, which has been a dream of mine for I don't know how many years, and it lived up to what I wanted, him as the stereotypical kind of boy of every young lass's dreams, like,
Oh,
because he was a
totally.
boy of my dreams immediately.
Sure. No, he's really great in it. And the thing that, one of the things that Greta Gerwig encountered, which every person who sets out to adapt Little Women encounters, is what I like to call the Amy problem, which is
Yes.
which is that when the book starts, Amy is like 12, and then by the end of the book, she's like 20.
It was a lot creepier when Christian Bale is promising Kirsten Dunst a kiss than I don't remember if it's in the Greta Gerwig version.
She doesn't
Okay.
borrow that little
Okay.
bit, but yeah, but it does, like, Amy's like fits and passions and reactions to things make sense when you have Kirsten Dunst playing them, right? Like her sort of, vanity and shallow, or like she kind of is portrayed that way, especially when she's young, right?
She's a baby. Yeah. She like,
Yeah,
it's like, whereas Florence, I think Florence Pugh, is it Pugh or is it Pew Pew? Yeah. It's
Just
I love her. And I missed, I think when we jump ages from Kirsten Dunst to
Samantha
older
Mathis.
Yeah, Samantha Mathis to older Amy, it did, there was a disconnect there. So I appreciated that Florence Pugh was playing her young and older, as all the actors did.
But
I
it's
mean,
so hard when
it's hard, and
when
I
she's
think
trying to play when Florence Pugh is trying to play a 12-year-old.
yes, and I think she does a great job, but for sure you get us obviously just from the very nature of the story, it was kind of like, wait, how young was she supposed to be in this story? And
Yeah,
I think it's still, and something else we'll talk about. I'm glad you brought up the Amy thing, because the Amy thing is one of the things that just throws me off completely. And I think something else I will want to talk about is the intercutting of the past and present.
Oh yeah, we gotta get to
but
that.
I think the very nature of it, and just, I wonder from your perspective, how did you feel about Laurie and Amy deciding to get married? Because for me, I could see, and I think it's more emphasized in the Gerwig version, just how kind of heartbreaking that is, even though it's more of a like, it's okay, and it's still that sense of like, I love you and it's all right and this is amazing and I'm so happy for you. But there's a sense of bittersweetness to it that I think may have been brushed over, and maybe even in the novel as well, like maybe just not as considered, that I think is something you would need to consider. And it does feel like something to me as just a general audience member who loves Laurie so much, that I wonder how difficult that was for you as a young girl watching, and probably very like relating strongly to Joe, seeing a guy like that and a friendship like that, and then seeing that kind of thing happen. Like, what was that like for you? Like, did you like it? Were you okay with it? Or did it feel weird for him to suddenly go after Amy?
I mean, I've been like, I am a Joe and Laurie shipper forever. And like I've
both.
made my peace with that they don't end up together in any version of any of it. I think that Winona Ryder and Christian Bale have such wonderful chemistry in the 94 version. And what I was going to say about Christian Bale is that he has this kind of like, I don't know, he just feels a little older and more mature than Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
And so he plays older version of Laurie, I think, so much more convincingly than Timothée Chalamet plays older version of Laurie. Like, I like Timothée Chalamet as like young, playful teen Laurie. When he's supposed to be like gallivanting around Europe chasing women and being drunk all the time, and like, I like Timothée Chalamet, but I just don't buy that somebody somebody with as much poise as Amy, like Florence Pugh's Amy has. She's so poised and incredibly like knows her own mind, and is just so secure and confident in so much of what she wants. and Timothy Chalamet is just even like in his physique, he's kind of scrawny and
Yeah, gangly,
um
awkward. Yeah,
yeah, and I'm just like, he's like, you're clearly a woman now, Florence Pugh's Amy, and he's still a boy that's like kind of pretending to be a man.
right.
Whereas Christian Bale's Laurie in every version, in every moment of the 94 version feels more like a man potentially.
Yeah, I got that too for sure. And I think that helps a little bit because I think at that point he is less playful. And again, I have not seen
Yeah.
I'm glad I have some distance between the Gerwig version and this version as well, because I would, as much as I want to go back and watch Greta Gerwig's version, I think watching them back to back probably would have made me a little bit more
Oh, I
like,
mean, yeah.
what about this? But I do, from what I recall, it's exactly what you're saying with Timothy Chalamet being more kind of fun and youthful, whereas Christian Bale feels a little more broken in a way.
Yeah, a little
Like
more
when
brooding and
Christian,
broken and
yeah, when
yeah.
when his Laurie is talking about like her unhappiness and things like that, I recall that from the Gerwig version, but I think Bale feels very almost destroyed by his love of Joe.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
I don't know if this line is in the Gerwig version, but a line that kind of threw me off and still kind of makes the Amy Laurie relationship feel weird is him saying like, it doesn't matter who I marry as long as I marry into your family.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's a weird thing to say.
that scene is really fascinating. The one in the 94 version that you're talking about, where they're under this tree and in Europe, and they're just talking, and he's drinking, and clearly he feels really like he's just gone to a dark place, right? Ever since
Yeah.
Joe turned him down. And he says something like, yeah, I hate John Brooke for marrying Meg. I hate Fred Vaughn. If Beth had a lover, I would hate him too.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and he kind of says like, it's my destiny to be part of your family, to Amy. And
That's
I
almost like a consolation prize. Like, I guess you're one of my only shots here. Like, it does feel very almost, it
kind
felt more
of
condescending than it did in the Gerwig version.
Kind of, but there's the honesty to it that I really appreciate, because even in the Gerwig version, when he walks in like after bringing Megan and Joe home from the party right at the beginning of the movie, and there's chaos in the house, and he meets Marmee for the first time, which is also the first time we meet Marmee, which I think is really interesting in the Gerwig version. We spend a lot of time with the girls before we meet Marmee, which I think is such a fascinating choice. But he you can see Timothy Chalamet's Laurie standing there watching the family in all of their like warmth and life, and like just kind of falling in love with all of them. And so there's this honesty to that line when from Laurie in the 94 version that I really respect.
Mhm.
Like he obviously does love Amy. And you know it's just a different emphasis in the storyline that Gillian Armstrong and Robin Swycord, who wrote the 94 version, are going for. There's a lot of just like a different focus to the narrative in 94. So
Right.
like the 94 version is focused a lot on Joe and Amy, but also focused a lot on Joe and Marmee, and definitely focused on Joe and Friedrich. And so, and then there's the Laurie plotline, all of these things.
Yeah.
And there's so many of the same scenes, but in the 2019 version, there's a lot more of Amy and Laurie.
Yes.
And there's a lot more of some other things like Beth and Mr. Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
Laurie's grandfather, which is really beautiful.
I love
that.
that stuff.
I
Yeah,
love
those
that
were
stuff too.
those were things I missed. And also
Mhm.
the is it Meg and John? Meg and her husband. Like
Yeah.
I missed I think the 94 is not exclusively but very focused on Joe, as is Greta Gerwig's version, but like you said, there's more breathing room for these other characters. And I missed,
Mhm.
I don't know if it was in the book, but I missed Meg and John's like they are the very like she married for love versus money, and they're struggling with that. And I loved that brutal reality.
I don't recall if that little mini plot with the fabric or whatever that's in the 2019 version. I don't know if that's I can't remember if that's in the book. I've never related to Meg. I don't I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Meg is not my March sister. I don't know who she is, or like I'm like, God, she's boring. Uh and I think that, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure some girls watch Little Women. Any version of Little Women is like, Meg's my girl. Like I
Right.
get Meg, but I that is not me. I
Meg's
don't
the
know.
realist. Meg,
She
she's
totally
like, I
is.
know what I need and I know what I want.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that makes her less
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it is just a different emphasis. Like they just spend, the two movies are concerned with different aspects of the narrative, and the characters are portrayed in slightly different ways. And so I think, again, it's really frustrating that even, the two of us who are sitting here going like, we're not going to compare them, or like, you just
Yeah,
inevitably
we
have
have
to.
to. Yeah.
And I just hate that film fans everywhere have to be put in this position. And
Mhm.
so, and in fairness, like I said, 94 is not the first version of Little Women by any stretch. The Katharine Hepburn version is very good.
But it certainly feels like there. I was reading a really great interview, or I think I mentioned the interview with Gillian Armstrong that I was reading, and her she was just feeling a little discouraged by the adaptation, and it kind of
Sure.
she was like, "Oh my god, that soon!" But it hit her like, "Wait a second, it's been nearly 20 years, or wait 94, yeah, almost 20 years. I think what 15?
No,
I can't
it
do
was
math.
only 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so 15 years. That's hard. And she was kind of like coming to terms with that and then sort of realizing, well, it has been almost 2 decades. And then her husband said something which I think is true and just speaks to like the essential nature of the 94 version versus other adaptations. And, you can pick and choose whichever one you love the most. But for me, and I think based on what we've seen just in terms of the public reaction to it, then her husband essentially said to her, he's like, you kind of paved the way forward this version.
Sure.
Like without your version, the whole point of the 94 movie was that at the time, and still now to a certain extent, the 94 version was really like, oh, this is a little girl's movie and we don't know who to sell it to and we don't think it can be sold to anybody. And then it kind of went against
Right.
the expectations and proved that that this movie could be good, it could be well received, it could respond to different audiences. Although I think it's funny when they were doing audience screenings, they would get the cards from men who they were like, would you recommend this to your friends? And they were like, I can't tell my friends that they have to go see Little Women. I'm a man, like things like that, where just that sense of like lost masculinity where you can't that's what they were dealing with to a larger
Yeah.
extent, to a
Sure.
smaller extent now. But like I think the 94 version really had a much harder battle to fight.
Definitely.
And I think that in a lot of ways makes it more frustrating. And like you said, it comparing and contrasting, it's inevitable. But in terms of which one is more important,
Right.
like it's your choice. Like you decide
Yeah.
which one you respond to more. But I think in a lot of ways it makes sense to me how it could be like Greta Gerwig is reaping the rewards of this other adaptation that was just as good, but also like is just as deserving maybe of
Oh,
all
for
that
sure.
praise.
I feel all kinds of complicated ways about all of it, right? Like it is sad that the Gillian Armstrong version, kind of got swallowed up in the hype around the Gerwig version. It is frustrating that two women filmmakers are being pitted against each other, right? Like that's classic oppressive technique, which is like keep people down by making them fight each other and making
Right.
people like making women in the workplace compete with each other instead of with the men that are around them, right? Like the existence of the Gerwig version creates that narrative, and it's just kind of an inevitable, ultimately harmful and anti-feminist mindset to try to like, crown one of these the winner in some kind of like
Right.
in some
Right.
kind of standoff. And so
I would love
that's
to see a sit down conversation between the two of them. I know
I
Gillian
would love
Armstrong
that
saw the
too.
film and she loved it. And I mean, again, this is the if we sound like we're painting Greta Gerwig as a bad guy, not at all.
Not in any way.
I think you are explaining exactly that's the antithesis of what we're saying. And by trying to pit these against each other, you are doing them both a disservice. But
You are.
I think Greta Gerwig just had the opportunity to make adaptation of a book she loved and
Yeah.
like was like, yes, please, I want to do this. I feel like there's something vital here for me.
Well, and I would love a universe in which the story of Little Women no longer feels relatable at all. Like, I would love a universe in which Amy March doesn't, Florence Pugh doesn't have to look basically straight into camera and go, hey, listen, I have to get married because I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to make money for myself. And if I get married and I have
Right.
children, they like are actually the property of my husband. And also he owns all of my money.
Yeah, you make Little Women now, and it's still like, oh, these things are ringing a little too true, a little truer than they should.
Exactly. And so, which I love that scene, and Florence Pugh does an incredible job in it, in the Gerwig version. But the fact that she still the fact that Greta Gerwig's version still feels so salient and you know,
We're
so
still fighting these
incisive.
battles.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's been 15 years. And so it's just like, I would just love a world where like Little Women is so unrelatable to
Yeah.
women.
It's like, I don't understand. Yeah.
I
Women
don't
struggling.
understand what? Yes. Like I would just love it where we don't need versions of it anymore, right?
Yeah.
And yet we don't have that world. And so it's just like, and the fact that Greta Gerwig's version has brought attention back to this really beautiful narrative is a good thing. Like, it's a net win. Having another beautiful version of Little Women is just a net win for everybody. And so like I'm not in any way going to complain about it. I'm so thankful that people are now aware that Little Women, was a progressive book,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
is still a progressive movie.
Well, I mean, in some way, it's the argument of those who ignore the past are doomed to repeat it. So
Right.
in ways, art in general, the importance of art is that it holds a very frank mirror up to us as people,
Right.
to our emotions, our feelings, our society. And I think that's what Little Women has done and continues to do. Is it's almost as unfortunate, and as much as I agree with you, I think in a lot of ways it is a reality check, but also kind of a reminder where it's kind of like excuse us, like, remember, like, this is something that's been going on for a long time, and these ideas are not new. This has come from straight from the 1800s into the 2020s. Like, we're
Yeah.
still handling this stuff, and that's art's role. Like, that's the importance of art, is to remind us of these things. So it's unfortunate, but also I think as long as we're living in a world that, like, where there are any amount of injustices, there are stories like this that can and should continue to be told and serve as kind of it's kind of a check, like just a reminder to be like, let's not forget, and let's we need to continue to work to move forward.
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like it's critical to sort of hit on this aspect of the 21st century cinematic landscape, which is that the veil of magic over the movie making process has been drawn aside, and like very, very completely and thoroughly, right? And especially with like remakes, reboots, sequels, there's this sort of like meta relationship we have with film generally. And I think we're going to run into this. You and I were talking off mic about the new Matrix movie that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
I bet you it's going to be a little meta aware. Like, it's going to be
sure.
it's going to be aware that it is a movie, right? Like, and there are some franchises where I think that makes a ton of sense. Like, I don't want the Matrix to pretend it's not a movie. The Matrix knows it's a movie, it always has, right? Whereas something like Star Wars, I don't want my Star Wars characters running around Star Warsing as hard as they can.
Right.
Like, the Star Wars sequels, not to touch that raw nerve, but like the Star Wars sequels feel like they're dealing with meta problems, right? Where they're trying to tell us a straight narrative, but there's this awareness where they're almost super aware of the audience at every moment. In doing like fan servicey things, and if that makes you happy, God bless you. But like, if the Gerwig version has this meta awareness to it, not to an unpleasant degree,
right?
But there is an awareness to it. Like I said, those scenes that I've highlighted about the characters spelling out this sort of like feminist talking points of the
Right.
film, those are there for like meta reasons. And Gerwig is pulling in like meta textual things from Louisa May Alcott's life, down to like the deal, there's no scene in Little Women of Jo like negotiating her
Right.
contract
Her
with the
royalties and
publishers. Yeah,
yeah.
that's not in the book, right?
Right.
So
And
like,
yes, that's something I could tell even watching it. I was like,
yeah,
this feels a little too contemporary. Not in a bad way, but like for sure I was like, I can't imagine this was in that book.
right. So Gerwig is like reminding us that there's a narrative happening within the narrative, right?
Right.
So she's saying, Jo is writing a book. The book is the movie you've watched. Does Jo end up with Friedrich at the end in the like romantic under the umbrella rainy, like romance movie ending? Did it really happen that way in Louisa May Alcott's life? That's an open question that Gerwig wants you to sort of think about.
Yeah.
Right? The distance between the narrative aspect of it and the reality aspect of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so I think that that's just a sort of 21st century trap that filmmakers are in, where there's not as much space in film right now for earnestness or like for that movie making veil to be drawn across again, where if you have a happy ending or if you have a quip or if you have like a movie tropey kind of thing, you almost have to undercut it and like wink at the audience and be like, we know that it didn't really happen.
well,
like
that's kind of what the Marvel movies have been doing as well. And
Exactly.
as somebody who considers the Lord of the Rings like total masterpieces, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary this year of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
I rewatched that, and again, what strikes me about it is how utterly sincere and played straight it is. It is not winking. It is not doing anything in the same way that Star Wars, the original trilogy, in particular, and you're reminded of just like the power of cinema and storytelling that has no ulterior motives other than telling the story they're trying to tell. And I'm glad you mentioned this because I think the other narrative trick that Gerwig employs that is not in the book or in this 94 version is the intercutting between the two
the storylines.
timelines. That's something I personally really, really love. It is 100% something that contextualizes it and feels very much like a post. I know he didn't invent it, people. I know I sound like a Nolan fanboy, but like it feels like in a post Christopher Nolan world, like that's something 100% that people are like, oh, we should intercut everything. What I think I really loved about it, that I miss in the 94 version is the 94 version, not that the second half of the film when they're adults isn't as interesting, but it feels like more of the fun stuff is when they're kids, like the growing up stuff. So when the narrative cuts into like Jo is now off and she's hanging out with Gabriel Byrne and they're going to see plays and things like that, it feels a little bit slower and muted in a way that I didn't feel from Gerwig's version, because I think what she's calling attention to is the loss of innocence in a way, which is evident in the 94 version. But I think in particular, when you're talking about what's her name, Beth's death, and you're intercutting the two like the version where she lives and the version where she dies, there is a very pronounced and for me effective acknowledgement of the passage of time and acknowledgement of the loss of innocence that I really, really loved. And that's not, again, that the 94 version is a straight adaptation that's like, we're just going to play it the way the book had it. And I think on Gerwig's part, that was a brilliant maneuver, not only to kind of emphasize new themes in a way that maybe like new themes and new ideas that weren't necessarily present, but also makes it her own and makes it more of a like, well, it's not just another adaptation. Here's my version of it. In addition to all the different, like you said, adding context, little lines and things here and there from Alcott's life, you also have this narrative structure that I think enriches the material in a way that I really responded to. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, the first time I saw the Gerwig version, I was so off put by it. I was just like, I was in the theater with two male friends of mine, and neither one of them was familiar with this story at all. And I was like, do you guys have any idea what's going on? And they were like, no. Like it was, they were confused. And you can find your way in it eventually, but it does take a few minutes where you're just like, wait, how are these people related to each other? Like, who is Laurie? Why is Amy over here? Like, what is,
Right. That's
there's,
right. Because I think Amy's first scene is like,
yeah, she's in the carriage with Aunt March
yes,
and Laurie comes running up and it's just a totally, yeah, they were just like, I don't know who anybody is, kind of thing, or how they're related to each other, right?
right,
Which
right.
is confusing, and that's fair. But and I was really off put by it. Watching it again this time around, I absolutely agree that it brings out new ideas and things. And the central sort of theme at the heart of intercutting those two things is, as you're pointing out, that when we become adults, we don't stop being the people that we have always been, right?
Mhm.
We are very much exactly the same people, and that the events that happened 25 years ago, or that that's an exaggerated timeline. I think in the movie it's only like 8 years that passed, but like, but the events that happen when we're children continue to inform everything about who we are, the decisions we make, the way that we see ourselves. And so like the serious illness of a family member is going to feel horrible and difficult, and no matter when it happens to you in life.
Right.
And the way that we think about our relationships with our passions. And so the story of Jo finding her way as a writer, I love that the way that those are intercut in the Gerwig version, where it's like we see her scribbling away at night when she's presumably 16 or something, and then again a decade later. I think that those things are really beautiful, and as you're pointing out, there's a loss of innocence, but at the same time a richness to, well, the fact that Jo's book finally gets published. We are reminded, because we saw only seconds ago her as a young woman starting off on that journey.
Mhm.
And so I think that is really lovely, and I don't miss any of it in the Gillian Armstrong version. The Gillian Armstrong version is doing something totally different, right? It
Yeah.
emphasizes the length of the journey, right? When
Yes.
you
Yes.
when you're forced to recall, okay, I haven't, Jo hasn't been this excited about something in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And so like I remember that how long the journey has been, right? It's just drawing
Right.
out a different piece, and making it point you in a different way. So I think that it was a brilliant choice on Gerwig's part, because it does add something to the narrative that a straight remake wouldn't have. I do think yeah, again, I don't want to frame it in terms of loss, but it's just like, well, it's kind of about something else in a lot of ways
Mhm.
when you
Yeah.
think about it that way. And I will say too, the score is such a huge part of the 94 version,
Yes.
in a way that it's kind of not in the 2019 version. Like the 2019 version has a lovely score.
Alexander
But
Desplat.
I know
The one name I
it's
do. That's how much I love him. I know how to pronounce his name.
good job. Um,
Somebody out there is saying that's not how you pronounce it.
I was gonna say, don't tempt it. But Thomas Newman's score with all the brass, like all the horns and brass.
It's much more romantic and
Yes,
there are
like
a
this
lot more.
sweeping, like Americana,
Yes.
Copeland kind of thing. Whereas it's Desplat's score is much more intimate.
It's the
Um,
difference. Let's bring Batman back into it. It's the difference between Danny Elfman's Batman theme and James Newton Howard and Hans Zimmer's Batman theme. It's
yeah,
like one is very bombastic and big and has an actual theme, and the other one is more moody and kind of
yeah,
like more about like tone and stuff and less
exactly.
defined. So very
Right.
similar.
I think that that's the thing in the Gillian Armstrong version is there's this sense of like a great American narrative that's happening. Whereas, yeah, the Gerwig version feels like this is the story of a woman writer finding her way in the
Hmm.
world,
Yeah.
as opposed to like this sort of big, here's the story of a time and a place, right? Where that Gillian Armstrong's version does, and is interested in immersing you in, right? Like Gerwig doesn't ever want you to be, it feels like Gerwig doesn't ever want you to be fully immersed in sort of like this cinematic like experience. She always
Right.
wants you to think about yourself sitting in your chair in 2019. and think about how you relate to Amy and Joe and Beth. And whereas Gillian Armstrong is like, sit down, I'm going to tell you a story.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that the scores really reflect that as well. And for that reason, the Thomas Newman score is just, it has the feeling of something that you want to put on every Thanksgiving, where it's like, here's this,
for sure. I mean, it's
or
like it
Christmas, right?
feels,
Yeah.
even though I think Greta Gerwig's was released around Christmas and certainly has those holiday feelings to it. Little Women 1994 100% is like, oh yeah, this is a Christmas movie without question. It just has, again, that romantic feel that is a little bit more the emotions you expect around the holidays. But two random things I wanted to point out, just things that impressed me so much about Armstrong's direction. I loved the movie. Again, the movie's pretty straightforward, and like we already discussed, like the edits, there's not a lot of flourishes creatively. It's just kind of very straight-laced, and not in a bad way, but certainly
gorgeous.
It feels,
yeah,
exactly. So there are a couple creative choices that I thought were exceptions to that were amazing. And one is when Amy falls through the ice, because you have the Newman score playing, like we're talking about, the amazing Newman score. Christian Bale and Winona Ryder are ice skating, and Amy, not Kirsten Dunst, Amy, they are she's trying to catch up with them, and they hear her scream and fall through the ice, and there's a cut to like just nothing, like it's just like you don't even see her, and then she pops up, but like the music, the sound, everything cuts out, and it's such a brilliant and effective choice, because this harsh reality is now taking over, as opposed to the fun and excitement brought on by the score and the feeling of it. And then there was another shot, of course, of once Claire Danes dies, the crane pulling out of Winona Ryder in bed with her is really, really lovely. But those are two little things that I really appreciated, and I think again emphasize that despite maybe a lack of narrative flourishes that we get from Greta Gerwig, that this is somebody, Gillian Armstrong was somebody who knew how to effectively convey a story through cinematic means.
Oh, yeah.
And I love those two moments in particular, really stood out to me.
There are some marvelous, those are really good. The Amy one that you're talking about is so iconic, where you hear her scream and you can hear the crash of the ice kind of off screen, and then it cuts to like just the bare patch of ice, and the angle is so precise where you can't see the hole in the pond or whatever. It's just so horrifying, as you're pointing out. But there are some beautiful tracking shots as well that I noticed when I was watching it this time around. There's the one where Joe comes in and she picks up a letter, and it's a letter that tells her she's going to be published, right? Not her book, but it's she sold a story for $5 or something.
Right.
And she starts moving through the house, and the camera's tracking behind her, and she's trying to anybody. She's talking to anybody. She's like, Hannah, Meg, like trying to talk to anybody. And she comes, she's so overjoyed and yelling about how she's going to be an author. She's like, I made $5 whole. And she comes in, and Beth is sitting there at the piano with her head bowed down over the piano.
Yes. Yeah.
And, Winona Ryder stops, and she says, the Hummel baby is sick. And that you can tell right away that it just, the momentum of that tracking shot that's following Joe around the house, it feels like it starts off feeling so triumphant, and as it goes longer and longer and she can't find anybody to tell her news to, you start to get the sinking feeling that whenever she arrives, whenever she finds somebody, it's going to be something really bad.
Yes.
There are a few of those that are just really beautiful, where the camera is kind of floating around in Gillian Armstrong's version, that create this emotionality to it. Yes, as you're pointing out, she's a wonderful director. There's so much about it that even just the shot selection that I find to be so iconic, and creating these moments of alarm or joy or whatever. I love the shot where Joe and Lori are dancing for the first time at the party, and it's like a static shot that's looking through a doorway, and you see Christian Bale and Winona Ryder. Christian Bale and Winona Ryder come into frame like just kind of dancing very
It's
ungracefully.
so
And then they
great.
leave frame again, right? The camera doesn't move, but they
Yes,
just come
yeah.
in from the right-hand side, like hopping up and down basically, and then just like exit again. And they come back in and they're like in a totally different position. And just, it's again, this shot selection creating so much like humor and warmth to that scene where she's doing comedy with the direction there. And in Gerwig's version, that scene's also really beautiful and really fun, but it's just totally framed differently. That's like a long little tracking shots. And in the Gerwig version, she cuts the sound out of it, so like we can see them laughing and playing and dancing around on the porch outside. We can't hear
Right.
them, right? So it's just doing something totally different. But again, I feel so much for Gillian Armstrong, where it's like, you spent so much time and care interpreting these scenes and these characters, and like here they are again, and it feels like your version might be forgotten, when you see
I
a
don't
new
think
version
that's
of it.
I don't think that'll be true though. I think so many people, and even Sarah watching with me, it was just like she, like you, grew up with the 94 version. It has so much love for it. I think the difference may be perhaps the conversation, whereas more people like myself are like, yeah, I saw the Gerwig version, I loved
Men,
it,
the
and
word you're
da-da-da.
looking for is men.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's just be blunt.
Yeah.
So men have seen the Gerwig version and didn't necessarily grow up with the 94 version. But of course, my generation at that time, I would have been 8 years old.
Yeah.
And 100% I would not have
Yeah.
enjoyed it as a
Sure.
kid, just because it is very much like knowing what I was into, knowing that there were no Power Rangers in it, like it's for sure something I would have been like, nope, not interested in. But like, I think that's a lot to do with it, is me being older and coming to the story through Gerwig's version, just at the age I'm at now, being
Sure.
less biased towards a film called Little Women, quote unquote. But like, I think that's a lot of it, but I think particularly young girls and now adults and women with children of their own are still gonna, I can see Sarah wanting to introduce our son to the story through the 94 version or things like that. Whereas that maybe that's what ends our marriage, is me saying no, the Gerwig version, and her saying no, the Armstrong version. But like, I don't think it will be forgotten. I don't think it has been forgotten. I hope this episode also reemphasizes its importance, but I feel like it has a legacy, undoubtedly, and it is something that, because it's film, it will be around forever, and it will continue to be around forever.
And I do want to say too, we didn't really get to talk too much about her, but Susan Sarandon's Marmee is a really different approach. Like, I would say the Marmee characters are some of the most different interpretations of those characters. And I think that both Laura Dern and Susan Sarandon they're working with different texts. Obviously, they bring totally different things to that part. And I think Marmee is such a critical character for the story that, as a role model for all four of the young women, and instilling values into the girls and being fallible herself and having her own desires and frustrations. And I think that that's just a critical piece of the puzzle when you're talking about Little Women. And I think it is also because the characters are so different, one of the more divisive like little moments in it. So I was texting with my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, and she's a massive Little Women fan. And I asked her which version she prefers. And she was like, that is an impossibly hard question. But the two things that she cited were the story with Beth and Mr. Lawrence. And she was like, I love that they spend more time with it in the 2019 version.
For sure.
She's like, but also the Marmee problem is hard because Laura Dern's Marmee is not mostly, but there's a lot of the letters from Louisa May Alcott to her mother and from her mother to her that inform the Marmee version in 2019. Whereas the Marmee version, Marmee in the 1994 version is straight out of the book. So it's like, there's a little bit more of this, like, here's how Louisa May Alcott chose to portray her mother in the book versus who her mother actually was. And they're very different people.
Again, pick. What do you prefer? It's there's no right or wrong answer. It's which one do you prefer? And that, I think there's value to both of them. I think it's really cool. Honestly, it's really cool to I would argue it's really cool to have two versions of it, and that you don't need necessarily a definitive version, but like that by seeing them and seeing how different they are, but what they each bring to the table, it almost enriches both of them. Like you can say like the Little Women 1994 is more reflective of the novel itself, and the 2019 version is doing more interesting things or not more interesting things, but doing interesting things incorporating Louisa May Alcott's life and just kind of grounding it in a reality that may have been more accurate to what was actually happening at the time. And it's really just like, which do you want? Do you want that version, or do you want the one that feels a little bit more like Christmassy, a little bit more like you just want those positive,
and
good feelings?
Sure, and poetic. I will say the 94 version, we talked about how there's a cleanness to the language, right? And the way that the characters speak. It's not that they never stutter or talk over each other at all in the Armstrong version, but there is this sort of eloquence to the way that they express themselves that's obviously been totally dressed down in the Gerwig version. So like the speeches in particular that Marmee sort of gives about like, you know, her values, and it's after Meg is at the party or at the debutante ball or whatever. And Susan Sarandon's Marmee is saying things like, you know, time erodes all such beauties, but like your moral courage and your compassion, these are things that time can never take away from you. Right. It's just this very formal, but really beautifully written. And again, more accurate to the novel expression of the same kind of sentiments that we get from Marmee in other places and in the Gerwig version. And so like, I prefer the 94 version of it for that reason to a large extent. I love the poetry to the language, right? There's that beautiful scene where Jo is arguing about why women should have the right to vote, and where she's, you know, there with Gabriel Byrne, and they're talking, and she's like, you know, women are human beings and citizens of this country. You know, we shouldn't have the right to vote because we are angels and men are animals. Like, there's this really timeless quality to the way that the characters express themselves in the 94 version that, as someone who loves like sort of poetry and stilted language, really speaks to me. Although I will never forgive either Gillian Armstrong or Greta Gerwig for leaving out the last line. They both leave it out. It's in the book, and I have no idea why no one uses it. No, the last line of Laurie's proposal to Jo. In that scene in the book, you know, Laurie proposes to Jo, she turns him down, and then he storms away. And in the book, Jo yells after him, "Where are you going?" And Laurie shouts back, "To the devil." And I don't know why no one puts that exchange in their version. I was just so hoping. I was like, oh, Greta Gerwig will do it. She'll do it. She'll have him say it. And she doesn't. I don't know. Why does no one let Laurie say he's going to the devil?
Maybe the extended version of Little Women. There's a cut where Timothy Chalamet, the 3.5 hour version. I love that. Well, what do you think? Do you want to do final ratings?
Okay. What are we doing at?
I think Baby Bales. How many baby Christian Bales do you give Little Women? I think it's a really, really good film. I think the formality kind of held me at arm's length a little bit and made it harder for me to engage personally with it, but I still appreciated it, and I still think it's a really, really good film, a sweet film, and certainly a vital film. I would say 3.5 Baby Bales for me, but I do want to emphasize that I really enjoyed it.
I'm going to give it 4.5 Baby Bales out of 5.
Perfect.
The only thing I'm going to knock it for in and of itself
is the lack of that line.
To
the devil.
Yeah. No, just that having seen the 2019 version again and last night, I do appreciate a lot of what it's doing. And so I want to leave space for it. I don't want to say that, you know, 94 is like all there can be. I think there's space. Look, nobody else do this soon, please. Like, don't do it. There's lots of other stories about women in the world. Like, lots of other stories about women in the world that you can make now. You don't need to make Little Women
again. I am almost positive there were 2 versions of Little Women in 2019. Like, I think it was Maya Hawke was in it.
Really?
Yeah. There was it was 2017. It was it
a miniseries?
It was a miniseries.
Wow. Okay. Everybody stop. Like stop. Maybe.
I think we've done about as much as we can.
Yeah. Maybe in 100 years from now, if you want to like look back on how bad women used to have it.
Then you can watch
God
every
bless
last
us
version
all.
of this and be
Yeah.
like, what a wonderful
What a
artifact
weird
from a
time
long
that
gone
was.
time.
Yeah, that
when we're
when
all
women had
robots,
no rights.
when we're all plugged into the Matrix and nobody cares anymore. It'll be like, oh, remember when we had emotions and feelings? Those were the days.
But yeah, no, I think it's beautiful. I should say right now, and I should have said this earlier, I have a sister, and she's the dearest person in the whole wide world to me. And I don't know if there is a better story about sisterhood. And sisters, when sisters are close, like there's no one in the world that knows me as well as my sister does.
I kept
don't
thinking
think.
about that watching this and just
Yeah.
feeling like I can see Tricia and your sister Lisa. I can see you know, having known you when you were that like
Yeah.
when 12, 13, like when we were
Yeah.
that age, like 100% it was in the back of my mind. I'm like, it's no wonder why Tricia
Yeah.
loved this so much. It feels very near and dear.
Yeah, exactly. The ways that women relate to each other are so specific and can't be like accurately portrayed by men. I don't know. Like it's a pretty big statement, but I just feel like when you live in something, right? When you've lived an experience, you recognize truth when it's portrayed on screen about your lived experience. And so
Yeah.
as someone with a sister who is my entire best friend in the world, and like so close to me that it feels like she's part of me in so many ways, that like there's just so much truth to it that you can't find. Like I can find plenty of other movies that resonate with me on personal levels in other aspects of my life, but sisterhood is something that's so specific, that this movie is just like I don't know, the portrait of sisterhood to me that is the most true, or I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just like Batman Begins is the most
Mhm.
important representation of who I am as a person,
Yeah.
being so powerful and a billionaire and wanting to dress up like a bat. I can't explain it,
Just
but it
fighting
just
with
really,
samurai swords on a glacier. It's
yes,
your lived
it's all
experience.
really, really just speaks to me in a personal way. But Tricia, this has been a wonderful Christmas present. Thank you so much for coming back
You're
and
very welcome.
introducing
Thank you
me
for
to this
having
film
me.
and making sure that I understood and respected its value, which I do. I
Thank
do
you for
now, and
being
I
open-minded about it.
of course. And you need to tell the good people who are listening where else they can find you to hear you wax poetic about many other
All
films.
kinds of different things, including The Matrix. Yes, so I am the co-host of a podcast called Beyond the Screenplay, and every week we do a conversational deep dive analysis into a film. And, primarily what we do is positive analysis. We break down movies that we really love and talk about why we think they are so good, and especially with a focus on storytelling and storytelling technique and script, and screenwriting technique. So we do occasionally highlight movies that aren't as successful in their storytelling.
Matrix trilogy.
We did just do an episode on that. And we also have, a patron exclusive episode coming out on the new Matrix movie.
Oh, I can't wait.
That we're all going to go see very soon. So, but yeah, and then, I also co-write for the Lessons from the Screenplay YouTube channel. So we have lots of like if you're more into, bite-sized 10-minute video essays about that exact same thing, why good things in movies work well, then you can also check us out on YouTube.
Yes. And where are you on the Twitter?
I am at Tricia Jean A on Twitter. TRICIA. Jean. JEANA.
I was gonna say, you got to spell the whole thing. If
I
you're
know.
gonna commit
You
to
really
one bit,
do.
you got to do the whole thing.
I know. I have one of those. Well, you have a name too that's often spelled in two different ways.
It's true. I have to explain. It's at Shawn Dorman on Twitter. YAYSHAWNDORMAN. And also on Letterboxd, I'm at Shawn Dorman 05. In both cases, Shawn Dorman was taken by somebody else, and I will never forgive whoever that person is. But they're out. Maybe they're a kindred spirit. They could be a kindred spirit. I just don't know. We'll have to someday, somebody out there make a connection, find them, and we'll make it work. Tricia, thank you again. We will do this again. It'll be great. Hopefully not another Little Women adaptation. We'll do
God,
something completely
save us,
different,
yeah.
whether it's Platoon or something else. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a Merry Christmas,
Happy holidays, everyone.
and we will see you at the movies.